Family, it's supposed to be a source of love, support and understanding. But let's be real, sometimes it's the breeding ground for tension, manipulation and drama. You know exactly what I mean. Those passive-aggressive comments at the dinner table, the never-ending cycles of blame, the arguments that start over nothing and explode into something massive. And the worst part, it feels inescapable. No matter how much you try to keep the peace, certain family members know exactly how to push your buttons. But what if I told you that you don't have to play their game anymore? What if there was a way to take back control, not by fighting, not by shutting down, but by mastering the art of power, patience, and psychological warfare? This isn't about avoiding conflict or pretending everything's fine. It's about shifting the entire dynamic on your terms. Today, we're diving into the Stoic strategies that the greats have used for centuries, strategies that will change how you deal with difficult family members forever. No more wasted energy, no more getting dragged into pointless battles, no more feeling like you have no control. By the end of this video, you'll have a bulletproof mindset and practical techniques to turn every argument, every insult, every moment of tension into an opportunity to assert power and peace. But before we dive in, I want you to ask yourself, are you ready to break free from the chaos? Are you ready to become the person who no longer reacts but dictates the outcome? If you are, stick around, because this might just be the most important video you'll ever watch. Number 1. The Silence Gambit. Mastering power through non-reaction. Picture this. You're at a family gathering, laughter fills the room, and everything seems perfect until it isn't. A sharp comment, a passive-aggressive jab, or an outright argument erupts out of nowhere. Your heartbeat quickens and your mind races to respond. But what if I told you that saying nothing at all could be the most powerful move you could make? This is where the silence gambit comes into play, a masterstroke in navigating family conflicts through calculated non-reaction. The natural instinct is to defend, to prove a point, to fight back with words. But Stoic wisdom teaches us that power lies in restraint. When you refuse to engage, you deny the other person control over your emotions. You watch their frustration mount as they expect a reaction, but get none. In that moment, you shift the balance of power. Why does this work? Because most family conflicts aren't about solving problems, they're about emotional escalation. When you refuse to escalate, you win. Picture the last heated argument you had with a family member. Did either of you actually resolve anything, or did it just spiral into a mess of raised voices and bruised egos? Silence prevents this cycle before it begins. It forces the other person to sit with their own words, their own emotions. Often they end up questioning themselves rather than doubling down. Think back to childhood, those moments when a parent, a sibling or a relative was unfair and you didn't have the power to fight back. Remember how silence became your shield, how sometimes your lack of response spoke louder than any words could. That same tactic, refined through Stoic practice, now becomes a tool of dominance rather than helplessness. But here's where it gets interesting. How far can you take this? Can you master the art of silence so well that your family learns to respect your presence without needing to hear your voice? Imagine a reality where the loudest person in the room holds the least influence, while you, saying nothing, dictate the energy of every interaction. That's the kind of power silence offers, if you have the patience to wield it. Number 2. Emotional judo, redirecting conflict to your advantage. You ever notice how certain family members seem to thrive on pushing your buttons? The uncle who loves political debates, the sibling who never lets go of old grudges, or the parent who always has a critique ready. It's like they feed off your reaction. But what if you could take that energy and redirect it back at them, using their own aggression against them? Welcome to Emotional Judo, a strategy based on Stoic resilience and martial arts philosophy, where you don't meet force with force, but with calculated redirection. Instead of clashing head-on, you guide the conflict in a way that benefits you. Imagine a family dinner and your relative makes a condescending remark about your life choices. Your instinct might be to snap back, defend yourself, or shut down emotionally. But here's the secret. Instead of resisting, lean into it with curiosity. That's an interesting perspective. What makes you feel that way? Watch as they stumble, caught off guard by your lack of emotional reaction. Now, they're forced to explain themselves rather than simply provoke you. Stoics believed in controlling what you can and accepting what you can't. You can't control your family's opinions, but you can control how you react. By strategically steering conversations, you make them work for you rather than against you. Remember those moments growing up when a sibling tried to rile you up, but the one time you didn't react, they lost interest? That same principle applies here, just with a more refined execution. When you stop being predictable, when you stop giving them the reaction they crave, they lose their grip over you. And once that happens, you can dictate how interactions unfold. Here's something to ponder. If every argument is a tug-of-war, what happens when you let go of the rope? What if, instead of resisting, you redirected the force to your advantage? Could you become the person who remains unshaken while others scramble to regain control? That's the art of emotional judo, turning family conflict into your personal playground of power and composure. Number 3, the tactical retreat, winning by walking away. We're all conditioned to think that walking away is weakness, that staying in the fight proves strength. But what if that belief is wrong? What if knowing when to leave is actually the ultimate power move? Introducing the tactical retreat, a Stoic approach to family conflicts that redefines what winning looks like. Instead of engaging in an unwinnable battle, you remove yourself entirely, not in defeat, but in control. Picture a family argument escalating, voices rising, tempers flaring. You sense that no resolution is coming, only further emotional wreckage. Now, instead of staying to prove a point, you stand up and leave. No dramatic exit, no lingering glances, just a calm, deliberate withdrawal. What happens next? First, the absence of your energy shifts the dynamic. Without you, the argument loses fuel. People left behind either cool down or stew in their own emotions. More often than not, they start questioning their own behavior. Think back to when you were a kid, how sometimes the most powerful way to punish someone wasn't yelling back, but simply leaving the room. The silence that followed was deafening. As adults, the same tactic works. But now, it's not about pouting, it's about maintaining control over your mental state. Stoicism teaches us that not every battle is worth fighting. Some fights aren't meant to be won, they're meant to be left behind. When you refuse to participate, you send a message. I don't need this conflict to validate myself. And nothing frustrates a troublemaker more than realizing their chaos has no hold over you. Now imagine if you applied this principle not just in arguments, but in life. What relationships would you walk away from? What situations would you refuse to entertain? How much more peace could you claim by simply removing yourself from negativity? That's the real question. Are you willing to embrace the power of leaving? Number 4, radical acceptance, embracing chaos without resistance. Family conflicts are like storms, unpredictable, relentless, and often beyond our control. You try to dodge them, brace for impact, or fight against them, but the harder you resist, the more power they seem to have over you. Now imagine standing in the middle of that storm, unshaken. Imagine no longer being at war with the chaos, but moving with it, letting it pass through you without destruction. That's the power of radical acceptance. not as surrender, but as a strategic way to reclaim your emotional control. The emotional trap: why resistance fuels the fire. Think about the last major conflict you had with a family member. Maybe it was an argument with a parent who refuses to acknowledge your perspective, a sibling rivalry that never seems to end, or an in-law who constantly tests your patience. What was your instinct? Defend yourself? Prove your point? Shut down emotionally? Whatever your response, one thing is certain: resisting the conflict only intensified it. When we resist reality, when we demand that things should be different, that people should behave the way we expect, we set ourselves up for frustration and suffering. It's like trying to punch a tidal wave. The only thing you achieve is exhausting yourself. Stoicism teaches that true strength isn't in forcing change, but in aligning yourself with reality as it is, unfiltered, messy, and often inconvenient. The power of accepting what is radical acceptance is not about giving up. It's about acknowledging, without judgment, that the situation is happening exactly as it is. It's about saying, "This is my reality right now, and I will deal with it as it is, not as I wish it to be." This shift in mindset gives you power. Instead of reacting emotionally, you become the observer. You see patterns clearly, you recognize manipulation tactics, and you detach from the emotional hooks that family members might use to pull you into unnecessary drama. When you stop resisting, you stop feeding the conflict. How to practice radical acceptance in family conflicts. Recognize the pain of resistance. The first step is to notice when you are resisting reality. Pay attention to moments when you feel frustration, anger, or emotional distress. Ask yourself, am I upset because of what's happening, or because I want it to be different? Detach emotionally, but stay present. When confronted with conflict, take a deep breath. Remind yourself, I don't have to engage emotionally in this. This doesn't mean ignoring people or shutting down. It means observing without being consumed by the emotions of the moment. Use the "this is happening" mantra. Whenever you feel triggered, mentally repeat, "This is happening. I accept this moment as it is." This simple phrase breaks the automatic cycle of resistance and recenters your focus. Let go of the need to win. Arguments often escalate because we feel the need to prove ourselves right. But what if you didn't have to win? What if, instead of debating, you simply let the other person speak and responded with calm acknowledgement? This disarms most conflicts instantly. Reframe conflict as a teacher. Every argument, every disagreement, every difficult conversation is an opportunity to learn more about yourself. What triggers you? What expectations are you holding on to? The moment you see family conflicts as personal growth opportunities, they lose their ability to control you. The unexpected strength in letting go. Most people mistake acceptance for weakness. They assume that if you're not pushing back, you're being passive. But in reality, acceptance is an advanced level of emotional mastery. It requires strength to stand in the face of conflict and say, "I will not let this control my peace." Think back to a time when you fought against something you couldn't change, maybe an unfair situation, an unyielding family member, or a painful truth. How much energy did you waste? How much mental space did it consume? Now imagine if, instead of resisting, you had simply accepted it and redirected your energy elsewhere. The power you could have gained in that moment is what radical acceptance offers. Nostalgic reflection. The moments that teach us. We've all had that one family conflict that left a mark. A fight with a parent that changed your relationship, a fallout with a sibling that never fully healed, an argument that exposed deep-seated issues. Looking back, what would have changed if you had responded with acceptance rather than resistance? How many hours of stress could have been spared? How many relationships could have remained intact? Acceptance isn't about rewriting the past, but about ensuring that the next time conflict arises, you navigate it with wisdom instead of reactivity. The final question: what happens when you master this? Here's the part that will leave you thinking long after this video ends. Number 5. The mirror method: exposing hypocrisy. Through reflection, family conflicts often arise from an unspoken battle of contradictions. The expectations others place on us are frequently the very things they fail to uphold themselves. Parents who demand respect but offer none in return, siblings who criticize but can't handle feedback, relatives who impose their values while disregarding yours. The hypocrisy runs deep, yet most people never call it out directly. That's where the mirror method comes into play, a strategic technique that forces people to confront their own contradictions without direct confrontation. The silent exposure: letting actions speak louder than words. Think about the last time a family member criticized you for something they themselves do. Maybe they scolded you for being late, yet they are notorious for their own poor time management. Or perhaps they dismissed your career choices while their own professional life is far from ideal. Your usual response might have been defensiveness, frustration, or an attempt to justify yourself. But what if you did the opposite? What if you simply held up a mirror and let them see their own reflection? The mirror method is not about arguing. It's about subtly and effectively revealing hypocrisy through well-placed responses, questions, or even silence. Instead of challenging their words, you make them confront their own behavior. How to implement the mirror method? Strategic questioning. When confronted with hypocrisy, respond with a calm and innocent question. That's interesting. Do you think this applies to everyone or just me? If someone criticizes you for being emotional, ask, have you ever reacted emotionally in a stressful situation? If a relative lectures you on responsibility while neglecting their own, inquire, how did you handle that situation in your own life? These questions aren't meant to be aggressive. They are meant to create a moment of self-awareness in the other person's mind. Mirroring their words back to them. Sometimes the most effective way to expose hypocrisy is by repeating the person's own words in a neutral tone. Example: if a family member insists you should always respect others' opinions, yet constantly dismisses yours, you respond with a simple, I agree. Everyone's opinions should be respected. Delivered correctly, this forces them to either acknowledge their contradiction or double down, making their bias painfully obvious. Non-reactive responses. When hypocrisy is blatant, the best reaction is sometimes no reaction at all. Instead of getting drawn into an argument, simply pause, look at them, and give a neutral or I see. This silence makes them aware of the gap between their words and their actions without you needing to say anything. Live by example. The most powerful way to expose hypocrisy is by not engaging in it yourself. If your family constantly complains about negativity but thrives on drama, be the one who refuses to participate. If they talk about respect but consistently interrupt, be the one who listens patiently. Over time, they will begin to notice the contrast between what they say and what you actually embody. The inevitable pushback, when the mirror feels too real. Most people aren't ready to face their own contradictions. When confronted, they may respond with deflection, denial, or even anger. You might hear, "That's different." Even when it's not, "You're twisting my words." When you're repeating them exactly, you always have to be difficult. For pointing out the obvious, this resistance is proof that the method is working. The discomfort they feel is their mind trying to reconcile the contradiction. Over time, the more consistently you use the mirror method, the more you will reshape the dynamics of family conflicts. Nostalgic reflection. When the tables turned. Think back to a time when someone called out your own hypocrisy. Maybe it was a friend who pointed out an inconsistency in your beliefs, or a time when you realized you weren't living up to your own standards. That moment might have stung, but it was also a catalyst for growth. Now, imagine giving that same opportunity for self-awareness to your family, not through force, but through reflection. The final thought. What happens when you master this? What if you could navigate family conflicts without ever raising your voice, without arguing, without stress? What if you could dismantle hypocrisy with nothing but calm, strategic responses? That's the power of the mirror method. And once you master it, you'll never need to engage in pointless debates again. Number 6. Controlled disruption. Shattering expectations to reset dynamics. Family conflicts often follow predictable cycles. Arguments arise from the same issues. Conversations play out in repetitive patterns, and the roles within the family remain unchanged. The more deeply ingrained these dynamics become, the harder they are to break. But what if you could shatter those expectations in an instant? What if you could reset the entire way your family interacts with you by doing something completely unexpected? This is where controlled disruption comes in. It's about breaking the cycle on purpose, introducing an unexpected variable that forces others to reassess their approach to you. It's bold, it's disruptive, and it works because it catches people off guard, dismantling their ability to predict or control the situation. The power of the unexpected. Think about a time when someone did something completely unexpected. Maybe a boss who was always critical suddenly praised you. Maybe a friend you assumed was unreliable came through when you least expected it. That moment forced you to rethink your assumptions about them. Controlled disruption works the same way in family conflicts. It scrambles expectations, making it impossible for others to operate in their usual patterns. Strategies for controlled disruption. Responding with radical calmness. If your family is used to seeing you react emotionally, flip the script. The next time a family member tries to provoke you, respond with an unexpected pause, followed by a completely neutral and measured statement. I hear you. This will disarm them completely because they expect an argument, but instead they're met with composure, agreeing with the opponent. When someone criticizes you unfairly, instead of defending yourself, agree with them, but in a way that highlights the absurdity of their claim. Example. If a relative says, "You never do anything right," you can respond with, "You're absolutely right. I've managed to survive life this long purely by accident." Delivered with a calm tone, this response makes them rethink their words without you ever arguing. Disrupting patterns of blame. Families often assign fixed roles: the responsible one, the failure, the difficult one, the peacemaker. Challenge this by doing the opposite of what they expect. If you're always the peacemaker, let them handle their own chaos for once. If they expect you to always react with frustration, respond with unexpected humor. Walking away. At the right moment, controlled disruption sometimes means removing yourself from the conflict entirely. When an argument is escalating, instead of fighting back, say, "I think we're not getting anywhere right now. Let's continue this later." Then actually walk away. This forces the other person to sit with their own words and rethink the situation. Bringing in an outsider's perspective. Sometimes family members don't listen because they've already decided what they believe about you. Introducing a fresh voice can reset the dynamic. Example. If a relative is constantly belittling your career, instead of defending yourself, introduce an objective third-party perspective. That's interesting. My boss actually said the opposite last week. This makes them pause, because suddenly the argument isn't just between you and them anymore. The backlash. Expect resistance. People do not like their expectations being shattered. Controlled disruption works because it forces people out of their comfort zones. But be prepared. Some family members will double down before they change. They might accuse you of being fake. Why are you acting so different? They might push harder to provoke you. Oh, so now you think you're better than us. They might even go silent, unsure how to respond. This resistance means you're on the right track. Stay the course, and eventually they will have no choice but to recalibrate how they interact with you. Nostalgic reflection. When you changed someone's mind, think about a time when someone surprised you, maybe a teacher, a friend, or even a stranger. A time when someone's actions challenged what you assumed about them, forcing you to see them in a new light. That moment changed your perception, even if just slightly. Now imagine doing the same to your family. The final thought. Why this works, controlled disruption, isn't about being rebellious for the sake of it. It's about breaking toxic cycles, shifting power dynamics, and forcing people to see you in a new light. And once you master this strategy, family conflicts will never feel the same again. Thank you for watching. I hope this video gave you powerful insights and real strategies to handle family conflicts like a true Stoic. If you found value in this, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people discover these life-changing principles. And if you're serious about mastering your mindset and navigating life with clarity and strength, subscribe for more content like this. Share this video with someone who needs it, because let's be honest, we all know someone struggling with family dynamics. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know. What's the biggest challenge you've faced in family conflicts, and how did you handle it? Your experience might just help someone else. Remember, power isn't about winning arguments, it's about mastering yourself. Stay strong, stay centered, and I'll see you in the next one.